Hello and welcome to another episode of the Making Theater podcast from MTV Arts and the Alcove Dinner Theater. I'm your host, Ian Ernsberger, and on today's episode, I welcome Megan Evans onto the show. She's the prop mistress for MTV Arts and the Alcove Dinner Theater, among other volunteer jobs for the company, so you've definitely seen some of her work on stage. What exactly does a prop mistress do? What are some of her prop rules, and what crazy props has she had to make over the years? Let's get started with the interview to find out. I am here with Megan Evans. She is the prop mistress for MTV Arts and the Alcove Dinner Theater. When was the first show you actually did with MTV Arts and the Alcove? I think the first MTV Arts show was Peter Pan, right?
On stage was Peter Pan, for MTV Arts, and the Alcove was Messiah on the Frigidaire.
That's what I thought it was. So you actually did, what was that, 2000? You did Alcove first.
I think.
Yeah, so you did Alcove first.
It was just before Peter Pan.
Yeah.
I think that was 2008.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't even think, but we've known each other since, well, when was? Because, I mean, like...
4 or 5?
Yeah, because, I went and saw Bruce in Trip to Bountiful, but I didn't really talk to anybody.
Yeah,
I just kind of went there to watch the show.
Murder in Green Meadows at Curtain Players, the auditions. Yep. You were supposed to do the show, you didn't.
Yeah, and then the Murder in Mansfield, though, was what, 2006?
I don't even remember when that was, but yeah, we did that.
I think it was 2006 because I was still. Yeah, I think it was 2006.
So it's been good 15 years.
Wow, we're old.
Yes, we are old.
But Bruce is older. Bruce is older.
Really what matters?
That's all that matters. Is that, and Aaron is older.
Aaron is older. Andrew is older.
Yeah. So we're good. We're still in our prime.
Fine.
So what would you say is the first, if you can even remember this, the first official prop you made for MTV Arts or the Alcove, the first big thing that Bruce came up to you and said, yeah, I need this made?
Well, I know the first show I really did props on was Cinderella.
Okay, so that was 2011.
Yeah. And that was a pretty big prop show. A lot of food.
Yeah. You did the scrolls too, the really long scrolls.
I did the long scrolls. I mean, we had all of the chorus numbers where people were selling various things. Those then came back during Beauty and the Beast.
Yes. Did you make JJ's little harness thing for his wheelchair?
Yeah, the little sausage vendor thing.
Yeah.
We had all the food. There were so many food props for that one number. I can't even remember the name of that song.
Whatever the king the two chefs sing the song for the king and the queen.
And every dancing chorus member needed a bowl or a platter of something.
Yeah. And I lucked out on that. I wasn't in that.
There was a lot of food. We still have a very large amount of it, really.
Yeah.
Some of it has been cannibalized to make other props, but there's still a good amount back there in the warehouse.
So Cinderella was the first show you officially propped for
MTV Arts. I could not tell you what the first official show in general I've propped, because everything in Columbus is a hazy memory.
Now, have you had to make props there that, you thought, outside of MTV Arts and the Alcove, when you were in Columbus, that you were just like, wow, you want me to make that? Or you want me to find that?
Not so many crazy ones. A lot of times if I did props for shows in Columbus, it was in addition to stage managing or in a show. It was kind of the simpler prop shows that I could do while doing other things. Moving up to Mount Vernon, nobody cared if I was doing a bunch of other things. It was here, still prop the whole show. So there's not anything. I'm sure if I really sat at home and thought about it, there would be a couple things that might make the list, but time and labor intensive props that stick out in memory have all been MTV Arts or Alcove.
What is the craziest prop that we've asked you to find or build?
Well, once Bruce asked me to find a player piano for Music Man, and I had a free one within 24 hours.
Oh, yeah.
So, that's... Yeah. I didn't have to do much with that, but I think turning around and having a free player piano within 24 hours was pretty impressive.
Now, was that the same piano that was a different piano that we had to go and get?
No, that was the same one that we went and get.
The really heavy one.
Really heavy one that we just pushed out the back of the truck.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I got to beat that with a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
Those were good days. We still have that.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
We do. It made me really, really stressed to see that fall out of the truck on purpose, but that's okay.
You're like, I don't want the piano to fall, but I know it's for the best.
I'm thinking, like, the really weird stuff, I don't know, making your fake pony for Farquaad in Shrek.
Yeah, my fake styrofoam horse was my favorite thing.
That was a really, really weird one. Because it really had to be as close to life size as I could get it, so you and Amanda would look properly sized on it.
Yes.
And then it had to have an entire fake leg attached to it, so it looked like Farquaad was normal size.
We had a lot of fake legs in that show. There were three sets of fake legs.
I remember sitting in my bathroom with my leg stuck out, putting plaster cast on my leg to get the, because I couldn't get anybody else to come, like, be a leg for me. And that was how I had to make it, was kind of making a cast of my own leg, held in, like, horseback riding. So yeah, that was a great one.
I had that leg. I had the legs that dangled out of my castle.
Sucked. I don't even have those on my list of props that sucked. But those were.
I'll tell you a funny story about those. I liked them, but they were heavy.
Yes.
So when I had to jump down and flip them away from me, backwards, I'd get hit with them every time. I'd have to jump down through this little tiny tunnel.
That's so sad.
Yeah. It was because those boots.
Crying.
Those boots were like 8 pounds of weight.
Stuff.
But it was just like, man.
Yeah. No, some other weird ones. I had to make a fake glass eye for Steve Herbst. I can't remember. It was one of the Hope Jones Wooten comedies at the Alcove.
Oh, yeah, that was
I couldn't remember if it was Red Velvet or Farce.
I think it's Red Velvet. Yeah, Red Velvet.
So I had to make the fake glass eye that he, within the show popped out of his head and showed everybody. So we were cleaning the house a couple weeks ago, and I'm going through this display case that has some various things of Andrew's and I's throughout our lives, and I reach in the back corner and there's this round thing, and I couldn't quite see what it was, and I pull it out and there's the eye. Somehow I got left with
stuff,
it, and it was just hanging out in my house for evidently 4 or 5 years, just in the back of my cabinet. Here's this eye. It looked really good. I don't know. Guess I'm glad it ended up in my house and not in somebody else's random house being like, why is there an eye?
Why is there an eyeball in my house?
That's like, and that sums up my entire prop making experience, is why is this in my house?
Why is this in my house? And you've built a lot in mostly in your house.
Oh, yes.
And then brought them over.
In horrible ways, too. Like sitting in my living room at midnight, like drilling, doing drill holes or something, sawdust all over.
And this is with dogs in the house, too.
Yes, paint fumes. Burning styrofoam actually makes really delightful patterns, and it really ages things, but it's not really a great idea to burn styrofoam
indoors.
In your home.
So in a small enclosed space.
I would recommend against that.
Yeah.
But I do it anyway.
I mean, I got enough just making bricks for the fireplaces that we would sit on things, and that's in this warehouse, and you're cutting them. I did it for Annie for Hannigan's wall on her door, and I just remember going, ooh. Yeah, I've got a little bit of a buzz going on.
Yeah. Well, and particularly when you're, gluing multiple layers of styrofoam to create something larger, and then you're trying to cut it and burn the edges so it looks... It's really a poor choice on my behalf to do that indoors.
Thinking back on it now, in my wiser days.
It's not like I didn't know that then, but...
I was on a time crunch. I need stuff done.
I was tired. It was midnight.
And you've had to make now magical things as well. Things that either extend or grow or shrink or explode.
Mary Poppins was one of the hardest prop shows. Honestly, not because it even had that much stuff. Shrek was probably the hardest prop show I've done.
Yeah.
Because almost everything needed built from scratch, and it had to be oversized, cartoony stuff, but it didn't have to do much.
Yeah. I mean, you had to build, for Shrek, I remember the 3 pigs' suitcases.
Their suitcase. Oh, almost every fairy tale character.
All the fairy tale characters.
They all had their suitcases. They all had things like the protest signs at the end. That has to look cartoony.
Which we still have some of those. Yeah. And we have the ogre sign, I think.
And that's the kind of thing. It's got to look like wood planks. It has to have the jagged edges and the wood grain painted in. It's not like you can just put it on poster board, because that doesn't fit in with the Shrek world. Mm-hmm. So, and all of the the luggage stuff for every fairy tale character. They all had to have something in their hands, especially it was part of the choreography that there was something they were doing.
You made my dumbbell.
Yeah, your dumbbell. We had the
sandwich.
Yeah, I can't even remember what that was. Yeah. Whatever Shrek was eating that nobody wants to eat.
Except for Fiona. Yeah.
I had to do, speaking of burning styrofoam, the wall that Donkey was building out of the little bricks.
Yep. Now, did you do you did all the Duloc stuff too, like the little, like the thing that he wore, his little hat and everything.
Yeah,
and
like Donkey had his little fake Duloc hairdo thing so all of that, and that's the same thing. It all had to be oversized. It all had to be cartoony. Some of the stuff, Gingy's torture stuff, we had baking ware that was torturing Gingy, like a spoon and a whisk and a rolling pin and a thing of milk, and they all had to be bigger than life, so it's not like you can just open your own kitchen drawer and get out a rolling pin. I had to make a big one. Some things for Shrek actually had to do something. The bird had to explode when Fiona sang to it.
Yep.
That was a beast, but it really worked consistently. It was pretty good. Ended up looking really good on stage. One of the...
Oh, the mouse. The remote control mouse.
That had to run around. One of the ones that was really terrible, at the very beginning, there was supposed to be a flower that bloomed when Shrek farted on it. And we built this wonderful blooming flower thing that was terrific, and it worked really well outside of the actual show run. We think what happened was that it was just a little too close to our things of like dry ice for the fog effects, because what we built actually was losing pressure and we couldn't get it to work when we were at the memorial, which was so frustrating because it took so long and it was so good, and then it just was useless, which was sad. Shrek is also one of the ones that we actually I cut a prop. I could not get it done. And it was supposed to be a giant foam Farquaad head that one of the Duloc girls wore.
One of the Duloc girls, yep.
And
I was sad about that.
Yeah, time was getting very short, and it was very difficult to even try to figure out how to make it, and we were already over budget for props. And it was for a 20-second, at the most, gag with no lines that referred to it.
Yeah.
And no backstage room to even put it once I built it, and I went, we're done.
It was such a good bit.
We're done.
It was such a good bit.
I know, but sometimes you gotta pick and choose just a little bit.
So going back to Mary Poppins, you seem to have had to make a lot of magical props forever, because we do kind of tend to go towards Disney and all those things. So Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, but Mary Poppins had realistic props that had to do magic.
Yeah, and they all did have to look very time period, very Edwardian. So it's not like you could just kind of come up with anything. It had to have a very specific design. One of the big ones was the telescoping hat rack. Anything that came out of Mary's bag, if you set it on a table or on a set piece, the whole audience ends up looking and going, well, that's cute. They're handing Mary things under there. So we really wanted to show that one thing coming out of nothing. And that was the telescoping hat rack that actually was completely self-contained, that would come up. So it didn't have to be secreted anywhere or in some kind of corner or in, underneath where the bag was or anything like that.
Hidden
she could
with mirrors, yeah.
Yeah, she could pull that hat rack out of anything, and it actually was strong enough for her to put her hat on it. And yeah, it just appears.
Now, you also did you make the cake that sunk down and then popped back up?
The cake. It was actually a top hat for musicians.
That's what
for
I thought
them
it was.
To kind of do the appearing top hat thing, and I took that and actually decorated it with liquid nail or something along those lines. If you put that in a cake decorating thing with a little tool, it looks terrific. It looks like frosting. So we had that. So yeah, the cake could get squished down every night and Mary could magically pop it back up.
And you had my magical...
The magical flowers.
Flower, which I always liked. I always liked doing that. I was always afraid I was going to break it, but
flowers
I did like
appearing out. And that was one of the simplest tricks, it was the flowers were just in a tube behind the painting, and I specifically did the painting to match the flowers.
And that was hung, right? I was just painting it on a easel or something. It was.
Was it on the easel or was it on the park
it was on the park gates. Yes.
Yeah, and then
that's how we hid it. That's how we hid the magic.
Yeah, just take out the flowers and hand them off. So that was a pretty cool trick. And we had the.
I was just always afraid that thing was gonna pop off that gate. And I was going to be like, oh, come on.
Yeah, I don't know about how it was hung on the gate, but even, our whole suite of Mary Poppins props ended up being rented to like 5 other theater companies.
But I think we we still have all of them, though.
Oh, yeah, we've got most of those.
Still here.
What else was there? The vases. Every night, a vase had to be broken to reveal stars in it. And
the vases.
We actually got some help on that. I had a gentleman from the NAS who was a pottery professor, art professor who specialized in pottery, I guess I should say, who actually made us unfired vases. And we picked the absolute simplest design, and he made these so they were air dried but not fired, so they were a little fragile, but they also broke beautifully and didn't leave any kind of dangerous shards, which was the most important.
It was just bending down to clean them while in your harness.
Yes, I could see that would be difficult.
The least favorite thing I've ever done on stage.
Yeah, but it really worked for the trick. And then we had one vase that matched that actually was made out of plastic.
Yep.
So for the majority of the show, and we did not want the vase to break, we were able to use that on the wall and then switch it out just before that scene.
And Kate got one of the biggest, applause and laugh lines with just the fact that the heirloom broke. Because they always made this big deal about the heirloom, and then when finally it broke, it was just her whole world was shattered.
No more heirloom. But yeah, it was actually a really terrific way of doing a prop like that had to break every night when we had absolutely no way of stopping to do any kind of cleaning. Even the breakaway glass that you can get at, prop companies can still have some edges, and it's so expensive. That would have been half of my prop budget right there, just trying to pick those up.
Now, you even had to make all of the kites too, right?
Made all of the kites.
And the kites were old school because we had to just kind of put the string on the fishing line, and I would chuck it in the air, and it would go off stage.
What did we have? We had some literal fishing poles backstage on the catwalk to hold those. And every kite was a couple dowel rods and some pieces of cardboard. That was tedious to make. Actually, you want to hear tedious? Those chimney sweep brooms.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
So those were, just a wooden dowel and a little wooden wheel on top. But every single one of those, I had to take a small drill bit and drill probably about 100 holes in the side of that wheel for each broom. And then take these little artist whisk things. They were sold at an art supply online store for texture painting and spatter. And you would take about 4 or 5 of those. I would hot glue them into every little hole on every chimney sweep broom. And we'd had, 15 brooms, something like that? Yeah. That took so long. That was probably one of the most tedious props I have ever just nonstop. Drill, glue. And then I had to come back and do that 5 years later for the witches' broomsticks in Oz, because that was the same way I made those.
I wish that would have been, if I would have been able to keep my broom from the very beginning, and not lost it multiple times between different actors. I was like, man, that would have been one of them.
Broom.
Yeah, I would have been like, I want to keep this because it's like, I've had it for 6 months. It was like one of those like mementos, and I would have hung it up on the wall and be like, that's my broom. That's my brush.
That is where the witches' broomsticks are going to be very shortly, is on the wall in my home.
Now, how long did the witches' broomsticks take you?
So the witches' broomstick, there were 2. One was the flying broomstick that had very little weight heat, and then one was the magic fire broomstick, which was heavier, that we definitely didn't want to have in the air in case I dropped it. The flying one didn't take very long to make. It was a piece of PVC pipe that I actually took a heat gun to kind of bend in some different directions to give it more of a tree branch look. And I added a couple like broken off branch pieces with Plumber's epoxy putty, which is one of like the strongest things I can make props with. And then I just had the little cage at the end and the little whisk thing. So the one that didn't have fire was very easy. The one that did have fire took a very long time because the entire thing had to be wired with a battery pack and have enough room for the flames and enough room for those batteries. And it was fragile.
To say the least.
We had to be very, well, it held up during the show okay, but it could not do something like if somebody knocked against it backstage and it fell over, I was going to be undoing everything to repair some wires because I just don't have what we were trying to do. I would have about a half-inch square space to actually get in and solder the wires together. So had some not quite terribly strong connections there. But those were fun. So, epoxy putty, that's actually, Plumber's epoxy putty was also the same thing. I handmade the parrots for the Mary Poppins umbrella out of that.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about the umbrellas.
Yeah, because it's very moldable for about 20 minutes and it dries rock hard. So whenever we're talking about props that need to fly, anything that could be dropped from a distance of 20 feet by accident definitely needs to be made out of something stronger than just clay or something along those lines. So yeah, I think I ended up making 3 different umbrellas for Mary Poppins, hand molding the parrots on 3 different brooms out of epoxy putty. And yeah, you have to work quick because it really does only have a life of about 20 minutes before it is too hard for you to mold. And then you've
made a sand castle. Twice for a sandcastle.
The second one was so much better than the first one. For How I Became a Pirate. Well, and How I Became a Pirate still has one of my absolute favorite props.
It is my favorite prop.
Never mentioned in the script.
Because I got to say the line.
I know. What was the line?
I got to say stow the Pop-Tarts.
Stow the Pop-Tarts. Never in the script, and I decided that what we really needed was a 4-foot-tall box of Pop-Tarts.
Which we are going to eventually hang in the warehouse somewhere. Bruce would like it hung up in the warehouse.
Yeah, I have not let them get rid of those Pop-Tarts for what's that been since that one? 6-7 years?
2013.
So 7 years. Yeah, I'm like, no, that is our own special 4-foot-tall box of Pop-Tarts.
I got married, and then the next week we rehearsed again, and then we came back and put the show on.
But yeah, that was truly a last-minute prop that I saw that line and just was like, no, this is what we need. So I got a very large box and put the Pop-Tart box face on it.
Trademark.
Yeah. And spray painted that thing blue for days.
Yeah.
I think it took like 4 bottles of spray paint. It's one of the harsh truths about working a lot with spray paint, as I think a lot of theater people know. You will inhale it, and then a week later you will sneeze and remember what color you were spray painting. And that's just the harsh truth. That, yeah.
I really liked the Pop-Tart, and I liked that the writers...
Yes, they liked the Pop-Tart
They didn't
box.
even know, like, they were like, it was the same thing when I said, when they said, we've seen the show however many times, and we've never seen an actor do your part with a Scottish accent. And I was like, well, you put a Scotty line from Star Trek in there, I'm gonna do the accent then. So I think it was really interesting for them to come see it and see almost a whole new concept for it, which I think is really cool.
Throwing different stuff in and that's really cool to say that you put something in that the authors loved that they had never seen before. Not everybody gets to say that.
Yeah, not every author is going to come and see your show.
Yeah.
Now, you've also made a lot of food props.
Yes.
You've made Italian food. You've made, turkeys, little chicken. What were they?
Yeah,
were they
Cornish hens. We've had a bunch of Cornish hens, lots of bowls of peas and beans and mashed potatoes. I think my favorite food prop so far has actually been really recently the antipasta platter from Breaking Legs, because that thing was a work of art. It looked like it could be eaten at any moment.
The little ones from... over the river weren't bad too. The little
the little veal cutlets.
cuts.
That's formed out of clay and then breaded with sawdust.
I was just more upset we couldn't actually eat. I wanted to eat during that show.
You find that a lot of props get made out of a lot of garbage. Things like old cans or aluminum foil or sawdust. I think I literally went out to our garage and swept up underneath one of our saws, and that's what those veal cutlets were breaded in. One of the weirdest things I've ever had to do was make the fake deviled eggs for the Nerd.
Yeah, I don't like to speak of that because I thought I would enjoy those, but I had to eat a dozen of them.
Well, it was that or actual. Okay, so for anybody that doesn't know, Ian hates deviled eggs, and I hate deviled eggs, and Andrew hates deviled eggs. And we were in a show that specifically was supposed to be like, here, guys, eat all these deviled eggs.
I happened to eat a lot more than everyone else.
It was not going to work for us, so I ended up getting a chocolate mold for Easter to make little chocolate eggs, and I made milk jello. That was like a white chocolate cream flavored jello that we made look like the white part of it. And I think, what did I have in there? Lemon frosting?
Yes.
So they were pretty tasty if you just had to eat one. They were disgustingly sweet if you had to eat like 6 of them, like
6
Ian
or 7,
did.
and then have to do the rest of the show. And it was that's very heavy stuff.
Yeah,
like it's creams and frostings.
I had to make like a dozen of them before every single show. And it's not like these suckers were going to keep for more than about one day. But it was completely worth it to us to not eat actual deviled eggs.
Very much so.
Bruce
did. When he did it, he ate the eggs.
I don't think any of us, the 3 of us, were just not cool with that.
No.
We're just not deviled eggs fans.
It wouldn't have ended well.
Yeah.
It almost didn't end well anyway, what I was eating, but it really wouldn't have.
One of the first shows, I think I actually did props for this show. It wasn't a heavy, I was a little one act at Curtain Players. I had to eat a Fluffernutter sandwich on stage. So peanut butter and marshmallow fluff. At the very beginning of the 40-minute show, and then down a glass of milk. And it was like, this is not fun. So thank you, Jeremy, for writing that show. I appreciated it. Almost 20 years later, I still have bad memories of that sandwich eating.
Now, I will say, I think one of the weirdest things you've ever had to make, especially for myself, is a pair of boobs.
Yep.
Which mine ruptured, or Chris's ruptured.
No, it was Chris's that ruptured
because he didn't treat his with respect like I did. But mine happened to go and become
stinky.
Rotting.
Yeah.
So mine happened to become rotted.
So leading ladies, both Chris and Ian needed fake boobs, and they're kind of expensive. And I know there are jokes about like stuffing bras full of tissues, but that just does not give any kind of natural look. So we actually did make fake boobs out of tapioca and glue on the stove. And I had to make, I think I ended up making like 4 different pairs at various times so we could rotate them out.
Mine was always the same until they went rotten.
Yeah.
So, and then I think you had to make new ones for...
I think I made one, maybe it was 3, 1 test run and 2 sets, a set for each of you, 2 sets for each of you.
Because I took those things, even if I had to do a massively quick change, I would take those things off and I was like, here you go. I am setting them down. And poor Chris would just chuck them and just, whoever was his costumer would just kind of hope to grab them from the air. That was
such a crazy show too for those quick changes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That was nuts.
But I loved those fake boobs because they worked and they had weight to them, so you actually felt like you were moving.
Yeah. They had weight and bounce.
Yeah, so everything was so natural, and you had to adapt to that as an actor, and because obviously we don't have breasts, so having to adapt that and go, oh wow, now I have this whole other thing on me that I'm carrying around.
Some of my worst visual memories that still cause me nightmares happened in that show.
Yeah.
Do not ever look at Ian if he's changing into dance tights, guys. Never. It's
not pretty.
terrifying.
It's not
Dance
pretty.
tights and a bra with boobs.
Now,
Don't do it.
you actually had to make me a second set of boobs, but for Farce of Nature, but you just kind of went whatever with those ones because
those were
they did
supposed
not
to
have
be,
to be.
yeah.
They did not have to look good.
And they were very fast. Wasn't that a very quick?
I was in that costume for a lot of Act 2, but it worked because it was whatever I, as the character, could put together.
Yeah, which
or could
was
go and buy.
shoving with, yeah.
It was kind of the same thing for Leading Ladies, but I think they went an extra step to make
Yeah.
it look good.
You guys made lovely women.
We actually, it was not bad.
I mean, like the whole with the dresses, I'm terrified that I actually know like your dress size and bra size. That's really weird.
I'm terrified.
But yeah. But no, it turned out it looked really nice. So that is always good.
What is the prop that you are most proud of?
Most proud of, my dead goose is definitely one of them. For Addams Family,
Oh,
Wednesday
the goose.
shot a
I
dead
forgot
goose.
about the goose.
That dead goose looked amazing.
Yeah.
I do think it's very recent, and maybe I just love them so much because they were one of the few props I've gotten to make that was truly my prop, and that was the witches' brooms. Especially that flaming one just looked really great at the end of that show. And those were the two. I still do love the pony from Shrek.
Whatever happened? Did we give that to someone?
I think that went to Bucyrus.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I missed that pony.
Yeah, the pony and the exploding bird. That took an awful lot of time to figure out how to do that exploding bird.
Now, you also contributed in Beauty and the Beast to the cart design that was Maurice's cart for...
Yes.
It's only in one scene because when he goes into the woods and gets lost,
he doesn't
it just
have it.
magically disappears.
That makes the list of props that caused the most cursing. And I'm fairly certain it wasn't even on my side. It was on Andrew's side because I had all the rest of the Beauty and the Beast props to get done and also play Mrs. Potts. And Andrew did not have quite so much to do, so he was kind of voluntold that he would be doing the cart. He did a fantastic job, but it was, we had a huge car battery sitting in the middle of it. That's what powered everything. And, it needed the bells and whistles. So you had to have the axe that chopped the piece of wood. You had to have a light of some sort, something that kind of went poof and had a little bit of smoke. I think they actually used the smoke machine to do a little bit more at the end when the cart was kind of on its last leg. It had to make a little bit of noise. Mm-hmm. So we had all these different things. It was all appliances out of our house. Like I think the actual axe was powered by a kitchen hand mixer.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember watching
So
that.
it was one beater in a kitchen hand mixer that was then zip tied to all this, basically the same kind of mechanism that would make car wiper blades work. And then, it came apart. That was another one that I really would have liked to just have stay in the warehouse for a while, maybe see if somebody wanted to buy it, because we put in so much time for it to then be destroyed kind of shortly after. But that's theater.
What is a prop that you always you were like, this is the one, I just can't get it the way, not the Farquaad, obviously there was the Farquaad one, but that you had to cut, but what is something that you've just kind of sat there and gone, I wish I could have done it better, or I wish I could have, done something different with the prop that you made?
Wednesday's bird. In the song Pulled, when Wednesday has the little tweeting birdie in her hand and then snaps its neck. And on Broadway and some touring companies you can actually watch, they've got a little bird in her hand, and when she snaps its neck, his neck clearly goes to the side and is just hanging there. And I actually got a pretty good design. It was just we actually used kind of a spring and a pill bottle with a little locking lid. But by the time we got the feathers on and kind of disguised that, it was a pain to reset. And then really at the end of the day, it was too small for anyone to truly see the neck snapping. And that was the one that just never quite got there, and I still see things out every now and again that was like, oh, if only I had had that when I was working on Wednesday's Dead Bird, which is the kind of thing that I think in my head, which is, bizarre.
Okay.
Wednesday's Dead Bird.
That's a weird thing to just have a random memory of.
Yeah. And then there's one other, the fire thrower in Wizard of Oz, when they meet the Tin Man after the Tin Man song, the witch comes in and actually is supposed to throw a ball of fire at them. And we went through like 3 or 4 different trick things that we had purchased online, and nothing ever quite worked. And, I'm basically hovering about 10 feet off the ground in the harness, and it wasn't really me as a prop maker being frustrated by it, but I was, as an actor and a prop maker, just like, oh, for goodness sake, can we find something that will work? And I don't know, I think I had a little thing to create flame in my hand, but nothing that really looked the way I wanted it to look.
Are there any props that you just look back and go, well, that sucked? That wasn't in any way the way I wanted it?
I'm going to be honest, by the time it hits the stage, it better be at least. I really try really hard not to put anything out that, it's one thing if a magic prop does not work. I try really hard to not ever put anything out on stage. And I've rebuilt things halfway through the show.
Yeah.
We've been doing something and something doesn't look right, or I decide I don't like something, and I'll just come in the next night, 3 days before opening, with a new prop. I really don't care to put too much on stage that is not to my standards, to the point that, particularly if you're at the Alcove Dinner Theater, things like...
You're a foot and a half away, yeah.
Yeah, things like newspapers. When we did the last night at Ballyhoo, I actually found microfilm copies of the newspapers that they had in the 30s in Atlanta, and had somebody, it was from some academic library somewhere in the country, and they emailed me these images. So those papers actually had the front page of the dates that I was able to kind of figure out what day it was that year. So they had 3 actual newspaper front pages. Same thing, bus tickets, a letter from one person to another. I try to make it, my thought is always, okay, if this drops on the floor and an audience member picks it up, what does it look like?
Yeah.
Is it a piece of scribbled scrap paper, or does it look like what they're talking about?
And you've done a lot of photoshopping too with props. You've done a lot of photoshopping with props. You have you took my head and put it on something for Dial M for Murder to make it look you and Glenn.
You and Glenn were in a few different photos. I think there. I had to make another one that I had to make was the bank book for Dial M, which was, I forget what decade was that sent in. 40s,
that was the
50s,
40s, I think. 40s, 50s.
So it was like
50s.
40s,
no, 50s. It was the 50s, yeah.
But it was like 50s and English. It was they were in England, so I had to look and make a bank book and a checkbook that would look like that specifically. I'm often photoshopping people's heads. I think there was one when we did Jake's Women at the Alcove, a picture of Abigail in the 70s with a baby, because that would have been a photo. Some other ones of Carly that had to be photoshopped.
You did the photos for Boeing.
Yes, we had several of those.
Because I would just apparently take the women on the same trip. And then when they weren't there, we would switch out the frames. And for when there were no girls there, we put the picture of just the
Eiffel Tower.
So I thought that was kind of a clever little touch to it.
We had some, I know Bye Bye Birdie had a few different, we had a lot of different things. Newspapers with Mark Fongheiser as Birdie.
You had to make his big poster.
Yep, we had to do a couple of those. Had a couple pictures of Aaron that had to be photoshopped. One of them looked horrible, and I ended up replacing it. That was one of those.
Well, you did also the big portrait of Gaston.
Yep, the portrait of Gaston and the portrait of Aaron, because the prince at the beginning, ripped picture, which actually was it was the image from the Disney movie, kind of, but Aaron's face as a kid.
Yep.
It was kind of weird looking, but
It worked for what it was because it was supposed to be torn up. It was supposed to be very bad looking, not bad looking, but I mean like the way it was all torn up and aged. So,
I mean, I'm not Rappaport. I actually did find a specific, I forget what sports newspaper it was that Steve was supposed to have, that I did the same thing, found, the original cover from about, sometime in the month where we were supposed to have it from that year. You have to find a lot of things. I've got so many files for my computer on an external hard drive that are ads from the 40s, ads and articles from the 50s, ads and articles from the 60s. So I can, just put them in to take up room. I mean, we did a whole paper for Leading Ladies that I had to completely create a front page. And I get really into making sure that those are.
Now you made that costume for Jackie, right? With the what was it?
Tasty Freeze.
Tasty Bite.
Tasty Bite.
Taste Bite, and it was supposed to be, supposed to be dirty.
It was.
It was adorable, though.
It was adorable. She looked so cute with her roller skates.
Which you added pom-poms to, right?
Yes.
I think, yes.
Yeah, there were pom-poms. Those skates are still back there somewhere. I don't think her actual costume is anymore, but the skates are still here. I think they still have the pom-poms. I'm trying to think of what other weird, I don't know. Sometimes it's just I sit in my house I'm doing this extraordinarily weird thing. There's feathers all over. There's my poor dogs. They just come into the downstairs and they're like, what is happening? And then Andrew comes in and he's like, no, really, what is happening? And I'm like, I'm making a goose. It's fine.
Now, do you have any prop horror stories where someone has either broken the prop that you have made, or...
You're stressing me out just by suggesting it.
Or where... Whoa, that was loud. Or where a show you've been in that something's gone wrong with a prop that you've used.
I mean, we've definitely had broken props before that I've had to come up with pretty quick fixes. Actually, one of my rules... So, cardinal rules of props. I haven't even said this yet, and it has to be said. Number 1, do not touch anyone else's prop. I have 2 more rules, and the second one, after the cardinal rule of props, my second rule is do not use the prop unless if you are specifically rehearsing with it or running the show on stage. Because a lot of people say, oh, this is my prop. I can touch it as much as I want. And then they're having a sword fight backstage with 2 umbrellas. And I'm like, no, I will hit you upside the head with these umbrellas. But my third rule is really important, and I like to try to stress this for shows. And it is, if your prop is breaking, if you think your prop might be breaking, if it seems weak, if it's not working the way it is, tell me immediately. Because I can do something about it when it's, 5 o'clock in the evening. I can't do something about it when it's 7:15 and you need to use it in 5 minutes because the show started, half an hour ago. You have to. So I often make a big enough deal about that I can kind of head off horrible prop instances. I do try to make it a point when I'm doing props for a show, even if I have other jobs or I'm on stage, I do try to check the props every day to make sure they are working correctly. Some props I'll have backups for just in case. So, I mean, most of my horrible prop stories are things like, okay, this simply didn't work and we moved on. Or funny prop stories that I like to tell that have nothing to do with me or prop making, but things like Andrew forgetting his pencil during the Nerd. And you guys got to make up a whole new scene. It was exciting.
A whole new scene, yeah.
So those are, pretty much the only, I don't know, can you think of any? I can't think of any horrible...
I don't know. I'm trying to remember. I think the gun worked every night that we did it for Murder in Green Meadows. So I don't think we ever had any problems there.
Well, I'm big on testing weaponry, And
even then it can still go wrong after you test it. You put it right in there.
It can. But yeah, doing a dry run in before the audience comes in, I do think it's important, to actually show the actors that are going to be using it that it is loaded with blanks so they can actually see this is the prop gun. I like to actually do a check like that
I just remember, and I think we borrowed that from you.
Yeah.
We borrowed for Flaming Idiots. I think we borrowed. No, that was Laura Miller. Okay, Laura Miller, because she had the starter pistol because she was a track coach.
Yeah.
So we borrowed that for Flaming Idiots because Chuck had to fire the gun, and he fired it, and it worked. We always checked it and everything, but when he fired it, it literally kicked back enough, like powder or something, that his jacket was on fire. So he just walks off stage. He walks off stage, comes back, and here am I just standing there going, he's on fire. And it's the one time I'm off stage, and he just taps it out.
This is fine.
And goes right back on the stage going, and says his lines like nothing happened. And we're just going, you're on fire.
No, well,
His sleeve was smoking.
I did Assassins once in Columbus, and that, not a big prop show. Some things that are a little difficult because it's usually, and before the 70s props anywhere from the 1970s to the 1870s. Mm-hmm. But so many guns and gunshots that I was also co-stage manager or assistant stage manager. I can't actually remember, but I had a belt on that. I think I had 3 guns because I had multiple cues that I was doing from, we did it kind of in a 3/4 thrust. So I was actually under the audience doing some of these shots, but I also had to cover for the actors on stage. If they had a gunshot, in case their gun didn't go off, I had the second pistol that was standing by to make the gunshot for them. And then the third on me was the backup in case my first 2 didn't work. So yeah, there's nothing like running around backstage with 3 guns on you.
Yeah. I had the bird that I had to crunch in Sweeney Todd. One rehearsal, they gave me a different bird, and it crushed, you heard it. It sounded like every bone in this bird's body was done. But then every other bird was like this styrofoam.
Yeah.
And it was just you couldn't squish it, you couldn't do anything to it. And I was always mad because I was like, I want.
So what did they have the first night? Do you know? Or the good bird? What was the good bird?
So it was like one of those hollowed out birds that you see with a little one of those little sticks through it, and it sticks in your flowers or whatever. It was like one of those, and I was like, I want this because I could pull it out. I literally just put it in my hand and it just went. Everything. It sounded. It was like
terrifying.
You heard the audience go ooh, but. Then they put the other bird back, and it never did anything. You couldn't squish it, so I'd have to throw it on the ground and then step on it just to try and really be like the bird's dead. But it was also just a bird. They didn't tell me this. They had put Velcro on the bottom of it so it'd stick to the cage. So sometimes if I was squishing it, it would be stuck to my hand.
Whoops.
Yeah, and I just get mad and chuck it like I had it's it's bones and it's blood were on my glove or whatever.
Delightful.
So that was only one of the things that I was just like, man, I wanted that first bird. But then I was like, I think I broke the only bird they had of that that they might have used for other things.
Yeah, you squished it.
But we even did Aaron did a gunshot. He was backstage with the 2 pieces of wood.
Yeah.
Hitting it together when she shot the asylum guy, and it always sounded good. It scared the crap out of me because I would keep forgetting it was coming, and I'd be napping in the dressing room, and then I just hear smack, and I'm like, I know where they are now. I'm already dead. It doesn't matter. I'll come back in the finale.
No, at least those would wake you up. Yeah, you can't sleep during a show like Assassins.
No. And there's always been props things that have gone, but a lot of that's like effects, like a sound coming in.
Yeah, there's always going to be, something. If you ever get through a live theater show if you tell me you went through a live theater show where nothing at all went wrong, I am going to say, well, that's sweet that you're a liar.
Yeah. I always say, like, because it is live theater and everything does happen. It's just how you take care of everything that you're using.
Yeah.
A costume, a prop, a set piece.
Well, that's like I was saying. I mean, I've seen plenty of props I've made, props other people have made that haven't worked correctly one night. But if you just say, okay, it's not working, and go on and, maybe somebody makes up a line or does something, or you act like it's working and you just move on. It only becomes the true disaster when
you acknowledge
when
it.
you kind of acknowledge it or freak out or,
Because I think I broke a glass or not a decanter, but I think I broke one of the glasses during Dial M just because I was going back and forth, from the bar off. I was like, I would have died the amount of alcohol I was drinking. But I think I did hit something and clinked one of the glasses, and it might have been one of our last remaining ones that was an actual breakable glass that we had, and we just kind of mixed it in because I know we still had like 2 of those left.
Yeah, we had a few different kinds there,
and then you just didn't know until all of a sudden it went and it broke because we.
Oh.
So those kind of things, but it's how you as an actor respect the prop, respect the set piece, respect the costume piece.
Well, and I can tell you I know exactly the first time I ever forgot a prop on stage, and it was for Trip to Bountiful at Curtain Players. So this was 05, 06, somewhere in there with Bruce. And I was supposed to have my cigarettes in my robe pocket. This was very early in the show. I was supposed to have my cigarettes in my robe pocket, and I didn't. And they were where they were left the night before. Mm-hmm. And, when you haven't had a huge amount of, at that point, I hadn't done too many shows on stage. And I just said, wait 1 minute, honey, I'm going to go get my cigarettes. And I walked from our living room set into our bedroom set and grabbed them.
Yep.
And I could have freaked out or lost it or whatever, but that's just, you just cover and you do what you knock something over on stage, you pick it up. The times I've seen people knock something over on stage and ignore it.
Yeah.
Well, no, if you're in your house and you knock something down,
I think
99% of the time you're just going to pick it up. Don't make a big deal out of it.
A couple of times in Boeing. Where something, because that was just kind of chaos where we're throwing props and things around.
When it's like total chaos, that's a whole different story.
But even then, we still picked it up because it was so hectic. Like something would just fall over. Like,
you don't want to have weird things tripping people or So it's just going with the flow.
So I mean, that's I just don't. Yeah, I mean, I see people that just get up there and they're young or they're inexperienced and they think that nothing can happen to them. So, they get kind of a little cocky, honestly, where they think that, nothing ever goes wrong. I'm the best. And then next thing you know, either they go up on a line or they forget a prop or they,
or something that's worked 5 times in a row doesn't work.
Yep.
Because that happens with props, particularly we are not Broadway. My prop budget for a major musical is pretty low.
Yeah.
I think almost every musical we do, I end up supplementing our prop budget with some of my own cash. It is even lower for straight plays and alcove things. We just don't have that much money to put into anything.
We don't have a crew downstairs fixing it for us, so we can use it the next day. Or even later in the show.
I work full time. I'm doing props and usually something else, either stage managing or costuming or acting.
90% of this is almost all volunteer.
Yeah.
So we're volunteering time to
on top of our 40-hour
on top of our
jobs.
Work weeks. So
we joke about me making props at midnight in my living room. But when else am I going to do it?
And I've done that with sound cues, sitting there listening to music or listening to, 15 different gunshots or 15 different, cars approaching on gravel. And, because you want it to be perfect. You want it to be right.
I'm thinking, what speed is the car going?
And
all of those things that you have to consider.
Your name is on it. That's the thing. Your name is on the sound design. Your name is on the props.
Which is why I said I don't really have any. I have props I've been disappointed they didn't work, but I don't have props out there that I go, it just didn't look right. It just wasn't the right. I do a massive amount of research into time period. When I'm doing props, the first thing I do is sit down with the director. We talk about, as always, the costuming, the set piece. That's usually with the full crew, but what that vision is. And then, I'm talking to choreographers. That's usually the first thing I do for a musical is what do the choreographers need for props, because they need to dance with those.
And you even have to talk to the actor. I mean, with Farquaad, it was like, what is the best thing that we can do? Like, what is it we want to put around? Like, what kind of harness or anything? So when I said, hey, I think we're going to get catcher's pads.
Yeah.
And then we'll have to attach them to the... And I mean, we had different ways that we screwed it on in multiple ways.
All your little legs. Yeah,
just
which
to try
I
and
didn't
figure
do.
out.
I only did the one set for the castle. But yeah, it's amazing
well, you gave me the legs, and then we had to figure out how to harness them to the... But it was just like, those were all just kind of going, well, these are really heavy. I know that now that those boots, and you even told me in advance, you were like, the boots are heavy.
Yeah.
And you don't have a lot of... it's just the legs with some stuff in it, and then these heavy boots. So because I think a boot of mine fell off one time in a rehearsal. Mm-hmm. And then you had to figure out, okay, well, what if I put, L brackets behind?
If we tie it this way, if we put this in there.
And force it in there enough and brace it, and it worked. It didn't work the way I wanted it to.
Yeah.
But I think it was just, again, we're not Broadway. We can't have that kind of stuff. We
always have to make concessions, which is what are the priority things for costumes, for sets, for props, for lighting. We have to have this. We'd like to have this. We can survive with this. And the last thing on these things could get tossed.
Yep.
Because we cut props, we add props. As the show goes on, somebody comes up with a gag. I decide I need a Pop-Tart box. It's always a work in progress. I enjoy checking with, I check in with the choreographers and the set builder. And for Wizard of Oz, I ended up having to do a lot with Katie, the lighting designer. We had several props that crossed over between set and props and lights. And that was really important to keep those lines of communication. Costumes. When you're doing props, you always sit down with the costumer because there will always be things that you need to decide which one of you is doing this. Is this a prop or is this a costume? And checking with the actors to be sure, is this working? Is it, is it
safe?
Yeah, that one prop is cutting your hand every night because there's a jagged edge on it. Well, let's do something about that.
Let's get rid of the jagged edge.
Yeah, I always need the actors to talk to me about something, which goes back to that third rule of please tell me if something's broken so I can fix it, because I've had things where I come in on a Saturday, if I'm not actually in the show or something, I'll come in a Saturday and be like, hey, this looks broken. And they're like, yeah, that happened Thursday. And I'm going, well, okay. Do you want to talk to me about it? Let's talk about it, because
I will say I never knew
thought it was going to get fixed.
I will say I never knew that my sausage skewer thing ever broke. You said you had to fix it, but I never knew because someone else took it, and then I technically they would just
broke in half, and I had to
me.
Yep, that broke in half, but I had plenty of time to fix it, and it was because it was literally a dry stick.
Yeah.
And I did have to. That one was a fun one, trying to come up with something that the dog would only eat the very small bit of hot dog that we actually wanted her to eat, as opposed to like 2 full hot dogs every night.
It worked.
It's a small dog.
Yeah, it worked.
No, it looked good, but yeah, things like that. That I don't want actors to have to think too hard about things being broken. If something's
I just never
broken,
knew. I never knew. Like,
you wouldn't have cared if it did. No,
I figured you would have fixed it anyways.
Yeah.
But like it was. I went off stage and I handed it to someone because there was no room back there anyway. Mm-hmm. So I never actually knew. I think it was all stored in the wagon.
Yeah.
But
something heavy got put in the wagon
and
that broke it.
I was out. Once that happened, they put everything in their own way.
I put everything in their own way.
So they knew how to store it. I was just like, I'm going to go check.
It broke at some point that show, and I had it fixed before you went on stage the next night.
No, I think you told me, and I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah,
okay.
and that's the way it should be. It should be. I remember whatever night it was, I was like, I didn't have a paintbrush, so I was like putting paint on my thumb to cover where I fixed it. But things like that. It has to quick turnaround. I like it best.
And I always tell you immediately if I do break something or if I need my pants fixed.
If you need your pants fixed, yes.
But that's the thing. It's communication and it's ensemble and respect. Respect for the set person, respect for the props person, respect for the choreographer, to talk to them and say, either this isn't working or I don't feel safe, or, is there something else we might be able to use that might be easier to store? I know for all the things you made for me, for the wizard, all the different, the scroll, the courage thing, and whatever, all that I wanted in my pockets. I wanted to be able to just pull them out.
We made everything that it could travel on you.
Yeah, I was just like, let's put this so I can have the heart in. And so working with Susan Brown saying I need an inside pocket so I can have the heart, because it was the biggest item, and it was like, well, I want that to just be able to come out so it looked like a Doctor Who thing, like he actually was a little bit magical, because why the heck did this guy even have this anyways?
Presto change it.
Yeah.
And it's talking to everybody is really, really important too, because shows like Beauty and the Beast are a really good example, because you have all these townspeople, all these chorus members that have these little parts they've played that don't necessarily have a massive bit of dialogue or part in the story, but there's the bookseller, there's the baker, there are these different roles they've played right from the start with the song Belle that they have to continue throughout the show. Well, if somebody makes a change, like person A isn't singing that one line anymore, if we don't hear that, we have a costume, if we don't get that kind of information, we might have a costume for one type of townsperson and a prop not ready, and it can get really bad. We've got to always sit down and have those lines of communication. The director, the music director, the props people, the set people, costumes, all of that has to be very known to be sure that things are coming together, that they're matching up. The amount of times we've had props cut halfway through the show is amazing. You would be, or added. The more communication we have, the more I know, because it's incredibly disappointing, and it's always going to happen. Something's always going to be left off the list. But for me to make a prop and then find out 2 weeks later it was cut before I even started making it, and I just never got that note, that's rough. That really makes you go, okay, that was 2 hours of my life I will never get back. Please don't have this happen anymore. So now I actually have certain props if I'm, maybe a little wary about if something's going to change. Maybe there's something we want to do, but it hasn't actually been worked in yet. I might hold off on those certain things, knowing that, we're looking at 50-50 chance that it's not going to end up being like that later. And I just save myself that heartache. I'll figure out what to do in a couple weeks when I actually see it being rehearsed.
So, I guess in closing, what are you kind of looking forward to, or what kind of changes do you think are going to be made theater-wise, and how bored are you not being able to do a show? It's a couple of questions.
Pretty bored. Some people know this. We're actually moving. We're buying a new house.
So that takes away a little bit of the boredom.
Yeah. So the entire cleaning, packing, organizing, buying things for the new house, all of that has actually really filled up my past couple months, which is very good, because I get really twitchy if I don't have enough to do.
You're just at home making a random prop. You're just like, what? If we ever do this show,
I'm just going to make this.
Yeah.
It would probably be some kind of fake bird. It's always the fake birds. Fake birds are so needed. I just want to get back to it. I miss being on stage. Part of me misses doing props, but honestly, a lot of the moving activities kind of fill that hole. I am missing performing. I'm missing the people more than anything. And, hopefully we'll all be able to get back to it really soon.
I mean, there's going to be a lot of changes, but I think, the world needs the arts. They need the arts. They need ballet. They need opera. They need theater. They need dance.
The amount of money that the arts brings to the economy, local economies, is staggering. There is such an impact that people don't realize. Local retailers, restaurants, just general sales tax for a city like Mount Vernon, not having the arts, not having visitors from other counties, other cities come in to see our concerts, see our shows. It affects hotels, all that tourism. So not having that can really, really impact local businesses and cities.
Yeah, we do. We need, and the other thing is, it's nice being able to do things like this, or being able to do, being able to do a podcast, being able to do flashbacks, being able to do other sources and other things, theatrically, and giving other aspects and other kind of looks into our company. Because I don't think, again, a lot of people really know the kind of work that goes into some of these shows. I mean, just talking with Bruce about, the process of when they even start thinking about next year's musical, or, how many hours you put into just one prop, how many hours we put into choreography or a song, not only just at rehearsal, but on our own time. Mm-hmm. And this is all volunteer. Unlike all these other people who are unemployed and have been unemployed for nearly 7 months, we are volunteering our time and our talents to do this for you and for ourselves, obviously, but we do it for you. We do it for the audience. And it's just, that's heartbreaking to me to know that that's being taken away, not only as, someone's lifeline, but as also just, their passion of the people doing it, and the passion of the audience watching. Yeah. So I did this once. I did it with Bruce because I was kind of just, and I didn't want to do it with the younger kids because they're not older yet, but we're older. So I'm stealing this from Inside the Actor Studio just because I think this is fun. So I'm going to ask you the James Lipton questions. I'm not going to do it in his voice because he was just
don't
rest in peace, but he was just awesome. But number one is, what is your favorite word? That's a good favorite word.
That's not it.
That's a good favorite word.
I would say something, I've always let ruby, goblet, there are things like that are they just sound kind of fun and bubbly. Bubble. Oh, that's another one. All right. Somewhere in there. I don't know. I don't have a favorite word.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's
dog. I like dogs.
I like dog. Okay. What is your least favorite word?
I don't think I have a particular least favorite word. It's just a matter of whose mouth it's coming out of.
Actually, you know what? Honestly, that is a good...
I was going to say,
that's a
some
good
of
answer.
My favorite words coming out of some certain mouths become my least favorite words.
I actually like that. Okay. What turns you on?
Creating.
All right. I like that as well. What turns you off?
Hyperbole.
Ooh. What sound or noise do you love?
Oh, like little puppies when they're asleep and they do the little
that's Ziggy dreaming 99% of the time.
It's just so adorable.
Yeah. What sound or noise do you hate?
I hate a knife on glass. Like if you cut your food the wrong way on a plate.
Oh, yeah.
That horrible squeaking. I hate certain people talking, like we said, with the words.
Yeah. Okay, so we have to do this one a little... So, what is your favorite curse word?
The F one.
Oh, just all versions of it? Or just like the main version?
Probably just the main version. I don't tend to stick anything else on the...
Okay.
End or beginning of that. It's really just me. Tone is important depending on what happens. It could be very quiet or it could be very loud. Honestly, be more worried when it's the very quiet one. When I get very quiet, that's when you should be concerned about me, not when I'm actually screaming.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Well, I don't know if this counts because I'm kind of sort of that already. And this kind of goes down to the stage manager part of me, but and being an actual wedding and event planner. There's parts of it that I do in my job now, doing venue rentals at Ariel Foundation Park and the Knox Memorial. But actually being a wedding planner, there's part of me that would also really love to own a food truck, a quesadilla food truck. Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What profession would you not like to do?
Anything with too many numbers. You do not want me as your accountant, your statistician.
We're actors. We can do the basics. That's all you need us to do.
I was going to say, I can balance a budget, and that's about all you want me to do. Is just balance a yearly budget, do some quarterly numbers. You don't want me having to do like forecasts for 20 years down the road, anything like that.
Like, I'll be your accountant. I'm not going to willingly steal your money. I just probably won't know I'm doing it.
Yeah, it's going to be kind of by accident. No, and like geometry's even worse. Like, there's a reason I don't do a lot of set building is because geometry, and I'm dyscalculic, so I get numbers mixed all the time. They get mixed up. And like, I can't dial a telephone number the first time. It takes me about 3 times to dial a telephone number. So, you just don't want me around numbers ever.
And finally, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
You did good.
I like it.
Good job.
I figured it was, could you make me this?
Well, it's that or your dogs are right over there. And actually, that's probably it. Is there they are. Here's a ball. Go play with them. That's probably better than you did good. Is Dabby's over there and Freckles is over there. And hopefully by the time I'm gone, they'll be saying, Libby and Layla and Lucy. And I would want to see the dogs of the past.
I like that.
Now I'm sad.
That's what I like to go out on. I always like to go out on a sad note.
Well, Dabby was it's fitting because Dabby was actually one of the living props I brought in.
Was a prop, yeah.
And she was such a good prop in the Miracle Worker.
She was better than my prop when we did it.
She found her light and she gave that big doggy smile and everybody loved her.
I had a basket with a blanket over it with I don't even know what was in it, and it was attached to a string.
Yep.
So that was my dog.
Dabby did good. And then Dabby got to hang out in the basement of the memorial for another 2 hours and have 12 little girls feed her bacon and eggs and popcorn, and she was very pleased.
Well, good. Well, that was fun. I think that was a fun little interview and an insight into the many, many props and work that goes into props.
Well, thank you for having me, and don't touch other people's props.
Darn right. Well, that was Megan Evans, prop mistress for MTV Arts and the Alcove Dinner Theater. She has definitely made some incredible props for us over the years. That's it for this week's episode. Tune in next week for another edition of the Making Theater podcast. As always, I'm your host, Ian Ernsberger, and we will see you on the next one. Please remember to like and share this podcast. And remember to follow us at MTV Arts on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and the Alcove Dinner Theater under Bruce Jacklin & Company on Facebook and Instagram. Please feel free to comment on the post about the podcast and tell us what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it, and any kind of suggestions you might have for another podcast down the road.